So everybody, welcome to Tech Sales Insights. Really excited to have my good friend Joey Gilkey on. He is CEO of Apex Revenue and Phone Ready Leads. We'll be getting into what those companies do in a little bit. And we have an awesome title topic today, which is improving outbound cold calling pickup rates. So certainly the beginning of the sales cycle is cold calling, getting more people to pick up. The more effective they are, the more productive they are, the more proposals, the more pipeline, the more it gets sold. And we'll be getting into that as well. We are sponsored today by Apex Revenue and Phone Ready Leads. They are the outbound sales effectiveness sponsor of Sales Community. And for those that are members of Sales Community, thanks. For those that are not, Tucker will put up a free link that you can join, salescommunity.com/springfree. And just before I forget, for those that don't have my book, we've got a bunch of the probably 90-ish Sales Community Advisory Board folks have contributed some awesome content in there. Tucker, if you want to put the link up for the book as well, that would be great. So Joey lives in Knoxville, Tennessee. So looking forward to visit it sometime, as long as I don't have to go to a Tennessee game. And we really met through when you and Apex Revenue acquired Phone Ready Leads. Phone Ready Leads was a great sponsor of Sales Community, awesome product market fit. And then by default, then we were able to get together and do a lot of great things. Really impressed for his, I won't reveal your young age, but definitely very young top talent. Has an awesome sense for kind of just doing the right things, getting it done. We've done loads of sales calls and just really has a great way about him, and pretty much almost a one call close of kind of smaller companies all the way up to some of the biggest ones, including one yesterday that we won't name. So jumping into the questions here. So you played football at Presbyterian College in South Carolina. What was your first job out of college?
First job out of college was actually in the nonprofit world. So I was raising capital for a nonprofit. So that was my springboard into sales without knowing it. I got to raise a bunch of money for nonprofits and got to brush shoulders with high net worth people. And naturally, I guess I did an okay enough job for them to offer me a bunch of jobs if I ever left nonprofit world. So that's what led me into my career.
Awesome. And then maybe just quickly go through your career from there.
Yeah. So after the nonprofit world, raising money, got offered some cool jobs, ended up taking one, kind of got me climbing a ladder of a Fortune 1000 company pretty quickly. I was like 24 years old, 23, 24, and had a lot of success, got moved into a management role, got my teeth kicked in because they thought just because I could sell well that I could manage well. And those two don't necessarily always mix. It was like oil and water. But I have to handle big budgets, run a 115 person sales org, at 24, 25 years old, and realized that for me, I wanted to spread my wings a little bit more, not have as much red tape. So I went and took a VP of sales job at a commercial risk management insurance firm, built up their sales department from scratch. Saw a lot of success there. Got poached to be the VP of sales of a marketing agency, a global marketing agency. And then after that, I kind of realized I'm building out these sales orgs for these companies. I'm making them a bunch of money. Like maybe I could go do this on my own. And so at 26, 27, I ended up starting my first company, which was essentially an outsourced account-based sales firm. So I've always had a knack for breaking into big accounts, enterprise accounts. And so we used to work with companies who had 7, 8, 9-figure contracts that would hire us as kind of like that outsourced spear hunter, if you will. We're going after the whales. And so get put on retainer, go land big 7, 8-figure contracts, do it more through an account-based style. Ended up exiting that company early 2020 to an account-based marketing platform technology company. Got kicked around a little bit in that acquisition, ended up leaving, got all my non-competes and everything removed, and then went and started Apex in 2020. So Apex is now about 4 years old. We acquired Phone Ready Leads in 2023, and we've been working with you ever since.
Awesome. Really cool. So maybe quickly just go through what Apex Revenue does. Pretty straightforward. We got something here from Ken. So I should also say anybody that wants to chime in with any comments or any questions, as always, we have Tucker behind the scenes helping us. So thank you, Tucker. Let's see. Ken says, I love to tell my team we all work hard, but we need to work smarter and not just harder. Joey and the Apex team have a very unique capability to do exactly that in helping companies grow qualified pipeline. Very impressed with the story and the technology. Wow. You got to grab that for testimonial.
Love you, Ken. First time I ever met Ken, one, I was like, man, that's a good looking dude. And then two, he was wearing a nice salmon jacket. And funny enough, when you brought me to the Sandler Enterprise Day, I was wearing a salmon jacket, just trying to be like Ken, and got all the remarks. So I'm just trying to be like you.
I got shit on a little bit more than he did.
I think Michael Norton at Sandler was like, "Man, did you plug that thing in? It's electric."
It's electric. There you go. So anyway, maybe just quickly tell us about Apex revenue.
Yeah, so Apex is at the top level, we're an outbound sales effectiveness firm. So I believe we know outbound better than most. And it started off as a fractional CRO, fractional VP of sales company. Over the years, started partnering with different companies, one of which is Phone Ready Leads. And so Phone Ready Leads has a unique proprietary technology they built that enables companies who use the phone pretty heavy to identify before ever picking up the phone who they can actually get on the phone. So the increase in connect rate, pickup rate, hit rate, whatever you want to call it. So make 100 dials, average company's talking to 3 people. Using Phone Ready Leads to make 100 dials, you talk to 25 people. And so you can see a sometimes 10 times the lift from one rep doing the same amount of activity. And so I kind of saw the sauce a little bit as a user of Phone Ready Leads, and decided, well, let me go back to my roots of building outsourced sales development firms that know how to break into accounts at scale. Let's combine that with the fractional VP of sales leadership, because there's a big problem and a disconnect between top of funnel and bottom of funnel. And so, when I sold my last company, the biggest problem was we know how to generate pipe at scale, but it doesn't necessarily mean that pipe turns into revenue at the same clip that we want it to. And so I built the fractional VP department to help with that problem. But then the problem then became, well, they're not filling pipe as fast. And so I said, well, let's tackle above the funnel data problems all the way down to bottom of funnel, and let's acquire Phone Ready Leads, solve the data problem, build back out the outsourced sales development function at top of funnel, and then have fractional VP of sales who helps take that from top of funnel all the way to bottom of funnel with our client's account executive team.
Yeah, so just to circle back, it sounds too good to be true, but the average company has a range of a pickup rate for people doing cold calling between 3 and 5%. So as you said, between 3 or 5 pickups per 100 dials. And with your swizzle, I'll call it, the result is more of 20 to 25%, which means then you have a pickup one every 4 or 5 dials, as opposed to 3 or 5 every 100, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
I've seen it in action and do a great POC, and can't say enough great things about it. So within kind of the go-to-market models, I don't know if you want to combine the businesses generically or separately, but any kind of 1 or 2 challenges in particular? Besides, I know Phone Ready Leads, it's really, hey, does this really work? Like I don't get it, but besides that, what else?
Outside of dealing with InfoSec teams, that's a big challenge. No, I think right now the biggest challenge that we find is just talent. I think that right now the space has been operating for about 14 years off of this predictable revenue model that came out of Salesforce and Aaron Ross. And I think that it's built on the sales development rep doing all the in-market pipeline gen type of work, and then handing that off to an account executive who's just sitting on their hands waiting for those leads to flow in. And so because of that, it's created a lot of behaviors in sales reps, both at the SDR level and the account executive level, that worked 14 years ago, right? If you think about 14 years ago, tech stacks were pretty light, data was pretty cheap. Sales reps were cheaper, right? Sales development reps were 40 to 50K on target earnings. Account executives were 90 to 110 on target earnings. Now you fast forward, and the tech stack requirements to compete, at least as it's perceived, is our tech stack costs have almost become that more expensive than the reps themselves. And now the reps themselves, you got sales development reps that on target earnings are between 70 and 100,000, and account executives are 150 to 300,000. And so unless, with all those costs going up, If productivity doesn't increase at that same clip, then we're losing profitability on the acquisition. And so we're seeing cost per acquisition dropping drastically, and a lot of it's due to how sales companies have their infrastructure built out to acquire customers, especially through outbound.
Yeah. So from a competitive advantage perspective, I mean, nobody really does what Phone Ready Leads does, right?
No, we have some people who are trying to compete. They don't have the scalability. They don't have the enterprise ability to take on. They're really slow with getting their scores back. And so I think a big advantage for us is, one, our scalability. I mean, we can service millions of scores in a week, whereas most can service maybe 100,000 in a month. And so I think that's scalability perspective, but then speed too. There's an interesting dynamic of when you score high propensity, low propensity to pick up the phones, and when you get that data back and action it, if there's a big gap between those scores, you still see an increase in pickup rates, but not at the same multiple that we see at 25%. A lot of these companies are getting 14, 15%, which is a massive lift. But if you can get 20 to 25, why not do that, especially at scale?
Yeah. And then with Apex Revenue, I mean, there's so many people that do outbound calling, outsource cold calling, telemarketing, whatever you want to call it. What's the advantage of going with Apex?
So one is Apex is powered by that technology, right? So our sales development team that goes to market at scale to break into your accounts at scale, we have the ability to get into those accounts and know who we can break into at any given time. So I can look at a list of 1,000 companies and know my entry points into each account in 24 hours. So we have that scalability there. But then the other is most companies, and I won't name their names. I've been on the insides of them all because they've all tried to get their hands on the technology. Is they have a difficult time turning pipeline into revenue. So they can do the top of funnel work to some degree. They can set meetings. They can create opportunities and hand raises in the marketplace. But they don't have an ability to impact down funnel metrics like close rates and sales accepted opportunities and things of that nature. And so if you're looking for an outsourced department or an outsourced sales rep, there's 1,000 opportunities to go find someone that'll do that for you. But if you're looking for one that can do above the funnel work with data, top of funnel work with sales development, and help your account executive or sellers actually turn those leads and opportunities into revenue, I don't think anyone's combining that fractional VP outbound infrastructure with top of funnel efforts. And so I think that's what makes us unique and why we're kind of growing at a clip right now.
Well, that's great. Are you hiring on the sales side?
Always. I'm always hiring. I'm always hiring sales development talent. Our SDRs make about 70% more than on target earnings averages in the market. So our SDRs make between 120 and 145 grand, which is a lot more than the rest of the market. And so we're always hiring sales development talent. I'm always hiring full cycle account executive talent for our internal use. And then, as I was kind of mentioning, we're building a tech platform. So right now we just hired a CTO, and we're building out our developer bench right now for what we're building. And so all three categories are something that I'm always hiring for.
Awesome. And then on the sales side, is it kind of Knoxville, or you do remote, or what?
For my sales development team, I prefer people who are willing to move to Knoxville. We've just seen a massive lift in productivity when they're in office. It's about a 30% lift. We will hire out, people outside of Knoxville for that role. As it relates to like our executive team and our full cycle account executives, I'll hire them from anywhere in the U.S. For the most part. And so I always prefer people who are willing to move to Knoxville or live in Tennessee. But I'm not super picky when it comes to those higher level roles.
There you go. And so for those that are looking to come to work there, what's special about the culture?
We're all pretty much former athletes or former military. And so I tend to hire a lot of folks out of the military and a lot of folks who come from athletic competitive backgrounds. And so it's a little bit more old school, right? It's an old school model built with modern technology. And so it's the unique aspect is, a typical sales development rep is going to get about 30 to 40 quality conversations a month in-house. Our sales development reps on average get about 600. And so the ability to pick up the skill set, and they're doing about 10 months worth of work, 10 months worth of conversations every month. And so the ability to grow and scale your skill set and your aptitude is at an extremely accelerated rate. And so I'd say that's one unique thing. But then the second one is we just kind of have a no nonsense. We've got 4 core values that we live by. We go over it every single day with the sales development team. We make every sales development rep read it out loud. When they join the team, they sign a document that is what we call our Apex core. And it's basically walking through, this is what we live by. This is our guide, our rules. If you ever want a promotion or you want more pay or you want to elevate within the company, I'm always going to pull that document out and say, are you living by these 4? If so, yes. If no, I'm going to give you a plan on how you start living it out and how you start getting those opportunities.
Right. What are the 4?
We've got, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss because one has a cuss word in it, but first one is empty the tank. So it's a big thing about leave it all in the field. It's an old athletic term. I'm a ex-Division I football player. I've come from that environment. And so if you want outsized returns and you want to live a life that no one else lives, you can't do what everyone else does. And so that requires you to empty the tank every day, fill it up, come back, do it again. The next is own your shit. I'm a big believer in extreme ownership. And so my belief is that you keep your power when you keep your ownership. And so the moment you start pointing fingers at someone or something else for why something isn't the way you want it to be, is the moment you've lost power to change it. And so if everyone has this mindset of there's something in why this isn't the way it should be that I can own, if we all have that, it's a rising tide that lifts all ships. The third is be the shoulders. So be the shoulders be a shoulder that your team can lean on when it's hard, but also be the shoulders that people can stand on when they want to continue to grow in their career. And the last is plan and play to win. So it's one thing to talk about it. It's one thing to be the rah-rah locker room crowd, but we got to go on the field and actually put up points on the scoreboard. And so what does it look like to batch your day? What does it look like to plan your day? What does it look like to plan your week, your month, your quarter? And then what does it look like to actually live that out and live by that calendar and live by that plan you laid out for yourself?
Awesome. Love that. So good. So getting into our title topic here, improving outbound cold calling pickup rates. What do you see today with the state of the outbound?
Yeah, so if you look 2020, the average connect rate in the industry was 7.7%. That's based off of the Bridge Group study, pretty widely accepted sales development study. If you look now in 2024, I'll go to 2023, it dropped down to about sub 4%. Now we're looking at, a lot of organizations are operating at about 2.5% connect rate. So if you think about it, if your costs are increasing, meaning inflation's happening, sales rep costs are getting more and more expensive, tech stack's getting more and more expensive, and connect rates are dropping or deliverability is dropping, then our data costs are also increasing. And so if all these costs are increasing, but our ability for our sales reps to get into conversations are decreasing, unless they create a multiple on their activity, if they're able to do 50 dials a day, to get the same amount of conversations they got in 2020, they're going to have to do, 150 to 200 dials a day. It's not super sustainable for a lot of organizations. And so you're kind of left at this crossroads of either increase activity or find a solution to the connect rate problem.
Or you got to hire more,
or hire more bodies, right? But profitability is going to continue to drop if that's the case. Yeah.
So, and just chime in here, we have from Donna. Thank you, Donna. Really love be the shoulders as a core value, unique and so important. Thanks for sharing. So for others watching along, just a reminder, feel free to chime in with comments, and certainly we always love questions as well. So what are companies doing wrong today with outbound?
Oh man, continuing to run the playbook of predictable revenue. Inside sales, account executives, sales development reps, BDRs, and account executives. A lot of it has turned into let's create mass volume at the sales development rate with these lower level employees which are great, needed, necessary. And their entire objective is they're building their entire model around one North Star metric that I think is crushing outbound, which is we think that meetings are the most important metric, right? So if a sales development rep's quota, fired, hired, promoted based off of how many meetings they set, we're already creating an interesting problem for ourselves. And a lot of that comes from the Chet Holmes buyer pyramid, which is 3% of the market's buying at all times. 7% is open to it. 30% is not thinking about it. 30% is not now, or at least they think it's not now. And then 30% never buys. Well, if all we're doing is fighting over meetings, we are in the knife fight or the bloodbath that is everyone is going after meetings. So everybody's going after the small sliver of 3% that are buying. maybe they're dipping into the 7% that's open to it, but they're forcing meetings onto a calendar when there's all this other data and potential clients that live in that other 67% of not now, not thinking about it, and open to it. And so when we optimize around the meeting, the challenge is that we don't get the intel or the strategy that comes with follow-up on where everyone else is in the market. I'll give you a good example. So if I go on Amazon and I want to buy something, I'm pretty quick, like, here's my Amex, I want that one. That one looks good. Great, go for it. My wife, she logs into Amazon, she reads the reviews, she looks at 20 different products that are similar, and it takes some time for her to make that decision. She's a buyer and I'm a buyer, but we buy differently, and that's human trait. When all we do is go after meetings, is we're just going after the Joeys of the world. I want to buy right now.
Right.
But there's the Rachels, my wife, of the world that exist within the human traits that are our prospects. And so what people are doing is they're not optimizing around identifying and segmenting the market based on where people are at. And then from there, taking those curated lists of those different segments of the market and creating different strategies for how we turn those people into eventual buyers. And so right now, the biggest problem is we have to shift the focus from being meeting-centric to being market analysis-centric. The SDR role, in my opinion, needs to change from we set meetings to we segment the market. And when you do that, you take these curated lists. Let's just say the 3% that's buying, put them on the calendar. That makes sense. Set a meeting. The 7% that's open to it, the not thinking about it, the not now. If I can give those curated lists to my what I call professional sellers, I'm not saying an SDR isn't a professional seller. I'm not trying to demean them. But you have people in the organization who are selling who are far more product market aware, right? Your account executives have been around longer. They understand your product. They understand the buyers. If you can give curated lists of people in the market and say, hey, account executive, this person's thinking about it, right? This person has intent. This person has interest. This person has intrigue. I want you to now, account executive, instead of waiting for me to just set all your meetings for you, I want you to take those meetings, but I want you to now self-source off these very small curated lists of people of we've talked to, they've heard the pitch, we've created a level of intent, intrigue, or interest, the 3 I's. And now I want you to work them, turn those into opportunities and meetings by having future conversations, more in-depth conversations. And when you do that, you see a massive lift in opportunity downstream, and then obviously an impact on revenue.
Wow, amazing. So you touched on a little bit, but kind of what is working now at most?
Yeah. So turning the sales development rep into a market development rep, identifying the segments, getting those curated lists to account executives, and then forcing account executives to now start self-sourcing. Now, when I say self-sourcing and I say full cycle account executive, most people think I need my account executives to just go cold to the market, go drum up their own opportunities, and then close it, right? Hunt, kill. Or what do you call it? Hunt and gather. The challenge with that is if you go back to the deliverability problem, you don't want your account executives who are 6-figure on-target earnings making dials on a 4% connect rate list. And so you don't want them going after thousands of prospects. And so when I say full cycle, I don't mean full cycle cold. I mean full cycle in terms of I want you self-sourcing off of these curated segments of the market.
Right.
So instead of going after 1,000, I want you to go after these 50. These 50 sales development reps already talked to them, heard the pitch, created a level of interest. And then I want you to now go turn those into opportunities by doing follow-up. So now you don't go cold as much, you go more warm. But that's now where I'm seeing the shift in the market is SDRs can't do all the heavy lifting for pipeline. AEs have to then take those segments, create their own pipeline off of this curated list. And then from there, you're kind of having a 2 different avenues, SDRs who are booking meetings and segments the market, and AEs who are having follow-up conversations with those curated lists, turn those into meetings, that turns into pipeline.
So that covers a lot of the kind of top of funnel, kind of big challenges being faced now. And anything else that you touch on for the top of the funnel before you get to the bottom?
I think the frame we have to get into is we need to sell to people the way they want to buy, right? I think that we've turned it into sell to people the way we want to sell, right? We've become a more seller-centric market. You've kind of started to see it a little bit with some of these sales methodologies like Medic or MedPick. Right. It turns into a very transactional order taker type of role. I just got to, are you the buyer? Do you have the authority? Is the need actually there? What are you looking for? And we just become order takers as opposed to someone who truly usher someone, takes their hand through a sales process that's not transactional in nature, but more consultative in nature, right? Really dig into the pain points, really understand the business model, understand the business impact that our solution provides. When you do that, your win rates go way up. One other thing I'd add is we believe that the list is the strategy. And so a lot of folks, because data has become so saturated, right? You got your Zoom Infos, your Apollos, your Seamless, you've got all these different data sources where you can just with the click of a button pull down thousands of contacts. Because we've commoditized data, we've also increased saturation of sales activity in the marketplace. And that's a big challenge to overcome, because what you're going to find is even Zoom Info, who is the gold standard in the marketplace, and we work with Zoom Info. The challenge with this is you pull down 1,000 contacts, call it 20 to 30% of that's bad data out the gate. And then, and it's no fault of their own, it's just the state of data right now. And then on top of that, because everyone has a different title, right? You think about the VP level, there's thousands of variations for one particular job to be done, right? So someone might be a VP of demand gen over here. They might be the head of demand gen over here. They might be the VP of marketing or CMO or whatever over there. There's all these different variations, which creates a bunch of noise when it comes to list building. And so who we think we're going after may not be the right person all the time. So I'm a CEO, but my executive assistant's title is executive assistant to the CEO. She gets pulled into that CEO list all the time. If someone's looking for CEOs, she gets hit up simply just because she has CEO in her title, even though that's not her job to be done. Her job is to be an executive assistant.
Right.
And so really creating highly targeted lists at the above the funnel level will impact top of funnel, which then impacts your sales accepted rate and your bottom of funnel. So that's what I would suggest.
Awesome. Should we give a little shout out for Bailey while you're talking about her?
Of course. Bailey is the angel that makes my world go around. She is my right arm. Bailey, she's on every call for the most part that I'm on. She takes my notes. She makes sure I'm on top of things. She's
totally vouch. Yes, I knew the before, and I know the after/current, which is
she's a monster,
which is much better. So a lot of that I think you touched on, but thinking about the sales organization building for the future. So you have the kind of that segmentation kind of strategy in terms of who does what, whether it's experienced or inexperienced folks. Any other things?
Yeah, I think when it starts getting into more technical sales, we've created this role called the sales engineer role. And so I think when there is a more technical sale, we've got to think about things from a cost per acquisition perspective. And so every time you bring in a high salaried individual or a high on target earnings, like that increase our cost to acquire. And so when you build out the model the right way and you have sales development or business development roles that are there to segment the market, and then you've got account executives or sellers who are now working these curated lists and creating opportunities. I think too many organizations are bringing in a technical seller or a sales engineer too quickly, and they're not doing enough of the ushering, the pulling on the pain points, et cetera, until the last step is when you need to bring in a more technical seller to answer some of the more minutia around the product or the service that's a little bit more technical in nature. If you do that and you structure it the right way, I'm a profitability guy. I know not all of tech or SaaS operates off of profit margins, but because I'm a service company, it's how I always have to think. It's how I have to think. And so I try to bring that to the tech space, which is where I operate 90% of our book. And I think that we need to start paying attention to what contributes to our cost per acquisition and start structuring accordingly. And so I'm not saying don't bring in a sales engineer. I'm also not saying bring them in too early. I'm saying bring them at the right time and structure your sales process accordingly.
Yeah, totally. I guess ideally bringing those expensive sales engineering folks in kind of when there's a defined need and all that to help is great. But then a lot of times too, I think salespeople, they're a necessary crutch because the salespeople aren't technical enough to kind of find the opportunity or find the need or understand the technical wherewithal. So there's still, I'd say, depending upon the product, still times that pre-sales resource still early in the cycle, not just at the end.
Yeah, and there's an interesting, when you solve for connect rate, there's a massive downstream profitability impact for a couple of reasons. And I'll give you a good example. So we have a client right now, you'd know them if I said their name. When they started working with us, they had a particular pipeline of revenue target for these two divisions. And for them to hit that target, we run their math of sales. So we look at all the funnel metrics and we plug in average, ACV, revenue target, pipeline target. and it spits out the amount of sales activity required. Well, then you plug in what's the typical sales activity of a rep that you have currently, and it spits out for them, this is how many reps you need to hit this pipeline target. It's a forecasting tool. Well, this particular team needed to add 30 heads at about $8,000, $9,000 a month each to hit that pipeline target. Their connect rate was 5%. We ran them through phone ready leads. We showed them how they can now get 25% connect rate. And just by impacting connect rate, they went from needing to increase their team by 30 heads to having to decrease their team by 5 to still hit the same pipeline target.
Yeah.
And so by spending, I don't remember the quote, but it's somewhere around 300,000 on getting connect rate solved, it saved them about $3.8 to $4 million in overhead.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those people would be easily $3 million plus. Yeah.
Not to mention the tech stack and the data to house all those people inside of your infrastructure.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're really a proponent of kind of morphing the inside out model.
Yes. Yeah, I think it has to change.
Awesome. So now these data vendors, right? So we're on calls all the time. People think, oh, I get my data, Zoom Info, Cognizant, Apollo, Seamless, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of times it's, they're names and numbers, but they're not necessarily that accurate, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a big problem right now about 40, at least to our knowledge so far, and we're analyzing millions of phones a month. To our knowledge, about 14% of any given list is right name, wrong person. So John Smith at ABC company, you have a phone number for him. You call John Smith. It's John Smith, but John Smith does not work at that company. It's some other John Smith who's a CPA in Nebraska.
Right.
And so there's a big problem there with just waste. And so one, you're wasting money on the data. And two, you're wasting money on the sales development reps activity to go find out that was the wrong person. And on top of that, you're wasting, the money you spend on your tech stack to go find out if that person's the wrong person. And so it's a tough problem to solve. We're working with a few data vendors, some of the bigger ones now, to try to solve for that problem for them. But yes, you're going to run into a lot of problems with just that problem. And there's multiple other problems: bad numbers, old numbers, disconnected numbers, corporate lines that are no longer attached to their name anymore, simply because a lot of work from home is happening. And so therefore the corporate lines don't reach people. And so being able to, best practice, if you don't use phone ready leads, so there's not a pitch for phone ready leads, but if you don't use phone ready leads, the best practice is to have essentially a needs attention bucket that your sales reps are very well trained on, that the moment they find out a number's bad, it gets burned in the needs attention bucket. And that goes to a data enrichment or data cleanliness team to then go find new data for that person. Because otherwise they're going to keep calling it. If they don't document it, they're going to call them again. Oh yeah, that's a bad number. Move to the next contact. Call. 2 months later, that number comes back. You call it again. Oh yeah, it's a bad number again. And so having a practice where you're practicing data hygiene at the sales rep level, because they're the ones who are on the battlefield having those conversations, identifying bad data. Now, phone ready leads solves that in 24 hours. We can identify bad data within 24 hours. We can identify who has high propensity to pick up within 24 hours. That's kind of the beauty of the technology there. But if you don't use it, then that's the practice I would do.
Yeah. And a call we had earlier today was with a large tech company. There's actually somebody, her title basically was Global Contact Health. So her job is basically making sure the contact health is right.
It's a big problem.
It's amazing.
I think that a lot of organizations are starting to take that role a lot more seriously. And I was pretty pumped to see that they have an entire role and department that's their job.
Awesome. So Donna has a question here. Thank you, Donna. Curious, what importance does understanding the DISC profile of the person you're meeting, attempting to connect with, play in prepping for the meeting itself, as well as the follow-up strategy? So for those that don't know, DISC is a age-old personality profile. And it's, I forgot what the letters are. I know it's like introvert and extrovert and
there's driver, D driver, some more ambitious visionary type. Someone who's high eyes, usually a high networker, more like friendly. I forget what S and C are, what the difference in the two, but one's more likely to follow a process engineered brain, and the other one, I can't remember the exact breakdown of that person, but yeah, so that's a great question, Don. I think what's interesting is we're running an analysis right now. So we're we're using an AI-driven disc platform. We're testing it right now, kind of in prelim beta stage, but we're kind of running two analysis. One is running an analysis again because we have the ability to know who in the market picks up the phone. We're running an analysis of, is there a commonality amongst personality profiles with those who pick up the phone? And so we have some thesis around that, a theory. There we go. Dominance, influence, steadiness, consciousness. Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
But we're also running an analysis of, okay, once you get them on the phone after we knew you would, and you talk to that person, what is based on the dispositions of every call? So a meeting, an activation, a not now, a more positive sentiment, a more neutral sentiment, a more negative sentiment. How does that map against the disc profile? I've personally, like in my personal day-to-day, I've been selling long enough to know that I don't need to know that before a call. I do think that some certain reps, it would benefit them using a Humantic.ai or a Crystal. I know Humantic's a sponsor, so I'd probably shout MR Preep out.
There you go.
But I think it's valuable, but I still think there's a lot about the sales process that doesn't need that. I'm a big fan of understanding who I'm talking to as I talk to them, and then start mirroring some of who they are with how I want to talk to them, right? And especially understanding a CEO versus a CFO versus a CTO versus a more marketer type, et cetera. They all have different. What's more important to me is identifying what is their job to be done in their role, what pain points do they experience in their day-to-day in that role, and what goals do they have as it relates to their role. Because a CEO is going to have a more visionary, big growth type of mindset, whereas a CFO is more, he or she cares more about the bottom line. So I want to have a more profitability conversation with the CFO, whereas as a CEO, I want to have a more vision, growth, take market share type of conversation. I have to know the buyer from that regard. I think that DISC would definitely help with that. I've not experimented a ton with it from a meeting prep perspective, but I probably use a lot of what someone would use if they had DISC at their right hand.
Yeah, I mean, I always find, like, for me, I like things short, sweet. I can make decisions fast. So for me, it's a painful experience if somebody comes at it with some, kind of analysis paralysis, just coming all like, okay, I got it. So, and I know a lot of times if I'm dealing with people, I can tend to be kind of more, short with folks as opposed to, some that really want to, they want the long story and want to absorb it. So sometimes it is good to know going into it. And, way back when it started 20, 30 years ago, it was really more within your kind of current team. So I would be at, I'm trying to think when it was, I was at Sun Microsystems, I think, when they acquired Storage Tech, and we used the disk profiles, and we got kind of as a team all together. And then everybody kind of went in a different corner based on what their profile was. And then where I thought, okay, maybe somebody was stupid and took too long to get it.
Yeah.
And then somebody else thought, because I'm in another corner, I thought, okay, Randy's not just a jerk, but okay, here's kind of what the profile is. A lot of times within the teams, that's a really cool way to kind of get an understanding and appreciation, just that everybody's different and how they're wired and what the meeting dynamics are. And then now the way Humantic AI has it automated to be able to go do that with people that you're partnering with or selling to is certainly really, really cool. So anyway, Donna, thanks for that question.
Yeah, and I think just one 60-second blurb on that. I think that right now, I think the average buying committee, especially at the upper mid-market to enterprise level, is 7 to 12, buying committee members. So it's incredibly important to know everyone has their own, again, pain points and goals based on their job to be done, based on what they care about. Like some people, it's job preservation. Some people, it's growth at all costs. And so being able to work the room to understand, I think too often we pick who we are most like, and we address them. So if Randy's in the room, me and Randy are very similar. I'm probably going to talk to Randy a lot, but Donna might be in the room and she might care about something completely different than Randy. And I'm just addressing Randy. I'm not even pulling Donna into the conversation. And so if you want to get buy-in from the whole buying committee, you have to talk to people from where they're coming from. And so identifying that, knowing that at the gate is super important. So if the CFO is on the call, I might talk about growth and ambition and vision with Randy, but then say, but to you, John, like as it relates to profitability, which I know is what you care the most about, this is how it affects headcount, right? So I can pull up the example of the one I brought earlier of, 300,000 in spend, decreased headcount growth and $4 million in overhead, I can throw that in there, pull them into the conversation, go back to Randy. And so I think that's pivotal for people who truly want to be a consultative seller.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for, overly simplification, sucking up to the lower level people that are doing a lot of the grunt work is huge, not just the executive level.
Well, they're the ones who are usually impacted by your solution the most.
Yeah.
They don't sign the check per se, but they're a buying influence. I mean, reading, if you haven't read The Challenger Customer, I think his name is Brent something Adamson, maybe, who wrote The Challenger Sale, which is the more popular of the two books. But I think Challenger Customer is a far more advantageous sales book than the sales book was, because it helps you understand who are the key influencers in this decision and how do I loop them into what we're doing.
Yeah. And then Matt Dixon, who we had on end of last year too, is a Jolt Effect, who's one of the Challenger sales. His fathers are godfathers as well. So moving on here, awesome info there for improving outbound selling. So what about any kind of one or two mentors you've had, and maybe one or two pieces of advice you've received along the way?
I have a CEO mentor of mine that has been really impactful in the way that I run a company. His name is Vinny Fisher. He's built 3 or 4 8-figure companies in his career, and he was an M&A attorney before that. And he's helped me a lot with how I see my people. One of the biggest things that impacted me was people can't sit in the seat if you're occupying it. And so oftentimes we have a hard time handing over a role or a responsibility or a function of a job to someone else, because we know there's going to be a diminishing return by them taking over for a season, but it's always going to be diminishing until they sit in the seat and get better and better and better at it. And the goal is that if your desire is to scale, that you have to put people in, and you have to account for the cost of the indirect cost of putting them in a role and performing worse than you for a season. But they're only going to get up to your level or better if you let them sit in that seat. And so really getting up out of that seat is huge. Another mentor of mine, his name's Townsend Wardlaw. He's really impacted me at like the soul level, right? The identity level, the mindset level of understanding, my being, who am I? And from being who you are creates your thinking, and your thinking creates your actions create the results you want. We all want the result, right? We don't walk down a path if we don't have a destination we want to get to. So we as much as we say fall in love with the journey, not the destination,
right?
We have to have the destination to care about the journey. And so if you go backwards and we want a result, our actions have to predate that result. And so your inputs to that result are going to be important. But what predates your actions is your thinking, right? It's why we can bring 2 reps in who have identical resumes, who have identical potential. You give them identical trainings, identical talk tracks, identical contacts to go after, and they get massively despairing results, right? There's a disparity between the 2 results. A lot of it comes down to who shows up, right? What's the thinking behind the actions that create the result? And the last part is, okay, well, if actions create results and thinking creates action, what creates thinking? And that's where it comes down to who are you? What is your being, right? Because being creates the thinking that creates the action. So he's really helped me at that being level of who am I? Who is Joey? Because from where you are creates the thinking that has the downstream effect.
Love it. Wow. What about any kind of 1 or 2 sales leaders or CEOs that you respect?
Who's really, really, it's interesting. So I have a pretty decent LinkedIn following. I have some polarizing opinions, as you could probably sense here. I kind of swim upstream. Probably about a year ago, I had a post go mega viral, like millions and millions of impressions. And it was me kind of talking about the state of the tech stack world, right? Of how we're obsessed with the tech stack, and it creates this tech bloat in the organization. But there's one specific tool that I called out some of the mega tools, but one was ZoomInfo. And I called out that they lock you into these long contracts. The data quality isn't as good as they say it is. And I think it's doing a disservice to the sales industry. And they're a multiple billion-dollar publicly traded company. And Henry caught wind of that. Henry's the CEO of ZoomInfo, and the dude cold called me. and of a multiple billion-dollar publicly traded company, took his time out to cold call me and not be like, yo, change your mind, but like, hey man, I want to listen. And then from there, we've created a great relationship. He's, I had a kid about 5 months ago, and he, sent a gift for my kid and my wife, and he's really been very open-minded about how we can help impact ZoomInfo. And so I think just from a respect perspective, that's someone who's doing it right at the top.
Awesome. Yeah. They obviously need the help as well, right?
They all do. Yep.
Yeah.
They're gold standard, but I told Henry I'm going to help you guys be platinum standard.
There you go. Perfect. So we already talked about a bunch of sales tools. Any other ones that you're a fan of?
Right now, like if I'm being completely honest, the phone space is very difficult because connect rates are so low. And a lot of that's because Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile have all created these spam algorithms to identify high volume calling. And so, there's the outreach.io's, the sales lofts of the world that were historically the gold standard sales engagement platform. But by the way that they're built, a couple things. One is you're getting your numbers usually off of Twilio. So they use Twilio to get numbers. They use those numbers on their platform. And they don't have a great auto rotating number feature. So they don't have the ability to constantly be rotating in and out numbers when dialers are dialing. And secondarily, they don't have a good spam identification system. And so they don't have the ability to truly identify that this seller has been calling with a spam number for a month now, and they're wondering why their connect rate's 1.5%. It's because AT&T is showing the end user on their cell phone spam likely. And so I'm a big proponent of FrontSpin. They're not a mega player in terms of they're not necessarily a well-known brand. But from a call deliverability perspective, I'd say that they are the gold standard. They've historically worked with a lot of agencies, so Reveneer, Memory Blue, us, in the sales space. But from a technological infrastructure perspective, I'd say FrontSpin is probably a tool that I couldn't live without right now.
Wow. Any others?
It's hard at the enterprise level. There's no way that people are going to acquire this, but I would say finding an email platform that does multiple inbox, multiple email sending from one place, unified inbox, a company called SmartLead is revolutionizing cold email by a long shot. So smartlead.ai, I believe, is the company there.
Nice. Very cool. Let's see here. So we are getting on. If any other folks have, before we close here, other questions or comments, feel free to chime in. So at the end, I always like to ask if there's any PG Randy story.
Of course. As I've gotten to know you, I've gotten to hang out with you a lot more in person. Invited me out to Beaver Creek. Got to hang out with a bunch of enterprise revenue leaders, and then invited me down to the enterprise panel at Sandler. So I spent a lot of extended time there. I'm sure I'll be down in Naples to see you soon. But it's so funny. You show up and everyone has a Randy story, and Randy's been in this space for decades. And so it's just really cool to see people who have had, we're sitting around drinking scotch or whiskey and smoking a cigar, and everyone's got some meaningful story about how Randy has helped propel their career. And so from a PG perspective, it's been cool to watch all these folks who are mega players in their space, especially in the channel, who've been impacted by Randy and how generous they are with sharing those experiences. So I'm currently only a year into this relationship, not even, building my own Randy stories up. So hopefully next year, if I come back on at some point, I'll have a lot more of my own experiences to share.
All right. Thanks. Well, you've been awesome. Time flies when we're having fun. So everybody check out Tucker. I don't know if we can post, is it kind of phonereadyleads.com and apexrevenue.com?
Yep.
So certainly check them out, or get to me or get to Joey. And next week, we're going to have Mike Norton from Sandler. They're going to be sharing some best practices around sales and sales training, which will be great. Then the following week, April 24th, I have Craig Irons from Meter, and his title topic is going to be the transition of subscription to usage-based pricing. So be on the lookout for those. And as always, Tucker, thanks for your help behind the scenes. Joey, you've been awesome. Thanks so much. We always full of great content.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. And for those that remember sales community, thanks. For those that aren't, go ahead and join. And Tucker will also throw on the free link. And Ken and Donna, thanks for your contributions here.